everybody, and welcome to another Agile IT Coffee with Conrad. I'm Sean Spicer, and I'm joined with Agile IT's CEO, Conrad Angramont. How you doing this morning, Conrad?
Doing good, doing good.
Great. Got my coffee. As you can tell by my voice, it's not my first cup.
Yes, yes. We had actually a problem with the Keurig machine, so I had to go old school and use a little steeper French press thing.
I can taste
Uh,
good though.
yeah, no, it wasn't too bad.
So today we're going to be talking about IT career and upskill planning. This is kind of relevant. We've had some movement within our organization. We're watching people advance into senior roles, and it's been exciting.
Yeah, it's something we go through a lot ourselves, and actually a question we get from a lot of customers around, what do we, you know, what do we need to go do with with our staff? If we're moving from our traditional on-prem going to more cloud. Some people go all the way over to cloud. Some people do it in phases. Some are dipping their toe in a bit. And I think one of the questions that comes out very often is, well, when we do look at that for our own staff, what needs to change? And look, Microsoft has a lot of certifications. I'll tell you that I'll say about even 4 years ago with Microsoft, a lot of their certifications still were bound to on-prem. They've changed all that, so actually their certifications now are really good, especially the ones that are called fundamentals, which are just kind of the basics of them all. But one of the things we look at from that change is there's times you need to have people on staff, or even sometimes you get contractors or whatnot, and they you know they they're normally deep into something, right? And so but the technology, the what services are in the cloud are just moving so rapid, in a very cool way, because they're providing much greater business value. But it really changes what you need to use from those IT experts. So back in the day, even for myself, you had to get really good at understanding things like, well, if I'm going to put this Exchange server or SQL server, what's the storage look like? Well, I need to understand iSCSI connections and fiber channel and RAID arrays and LUNs and storage connections. And then I also have to understand, well, how do I patch and manage those? How do I keep them together? How do I, there's all these problems, just to do email. I won't say just emails. Email's vital, but to do all the other services as well. So then you add that to the person who also needs to understand Veeam or VMware or Hyper-V or what they're doing for Oracle. So you needed a team of experts that needed some level of depth, because they really need to understand from an application, how was it connecting in? So there's identity, how does that data flow down from a security perspective? Where does that go to the disk? How does memory management, how we handle the logs? So you absolutely needed that level of depth. Very hard for a lot of organizations to both find people, recruit people, maintain those people. And you might still have a lot of them on staff, but what's changing is, well, once you move to the cloud, do you lose all that capability? I would say it depends where you're going. So if you're going to move to more infrastructure as a service into Azure, some of those things still apply, because there's a virtual machine there. You still have to think about your storage. Are you doing premium managed disks or regular managed disk? Are you doing SSD, drives that are more physically located to the virtual machine, or doing more traditional HHD drives that are actually virtual tied to a blob? So you still need to understand that there's still things like IOPS and input output per second that you tend to do, but it's very different. At the same time, you also relinquish a lot of pieces. You're not really dealing with really hardware. It's these virtualized kind of cloud components, but there's many of those where, well, our email's not being done that way. It's just an Exchange service. But now you start to, those experts, if you will, become more generalists. They start to think more about the breadth of service. So instead of having 2 or 3 people that were dedicated to just the core platform services like email, Active Directory, you can still have them because they understand the context of the organization. But now they need to really understand how does that apply with Exchange Online? How does that apply inside Teams? How does that apply in terms of identities for guests and contractors using Azure Active Directory? So there's still much for them to do, but now they're becoming broader in what that is. So I've seen a lot of the more traditional systems engineer, IT person that tends to lean towards the Microsoft 365 kind of core areas, again, Teams and those sorts of areas. But because they don't have to spend the day-to-day in managing patching boxes, it really opens the door for them to start digging deeper into the other areas of the business that could really make a difference, such as what do we do with Teams? How do we provision it the right way? How do we make sure that if we're dealing with our contractors or partners, can kind of support that? But also in Teams, many of the users and groups tend to be self-manageable. They can create a team, they can manage it themselves. They don't need to call IT for a new site. They can do it themselves, but somebody still has to look at, are we doing the right data governance with it, which is a future topic we'll talk about. So it really is becoming more broad in their knowledge. So that's great because they're spending less time on the other pieces. And that really allows them to do the places where the business really needs IT, which is providing that greater business value. And there is so much that changes on the Microsoft platform that they need somebody. So IT really can truly be an enabler. I know we've talked about that for years, like IT is an enabler. But we thought about that because they enabled the provisioning of a box and a service. So there's still that kind of that old school IT view of it, where now you really truly can enable new areas and start to broaden out what they go do. What's also very different is understanding that kind of big picture of where we're going as a business. When we start looking at the services that you can combine, you're also not bound to things. And I think that was a problem for years was, well, we have this server, that's our file server, and it's on the M drive or O drive. We have this, other Active Directory servers. We have to upgrade that. That impacts this. And it kind of really held you back because you're so fixated on that thing, where now that data is a little bit more portable. And this is where future topic, one of my little favorites, is to talk about the difference in the way of thinking from a Microsoft infrastructure paradigm before, which is by hierarchy, where now it's by association, because you can really start to remap sites and structures. You can start to remap where data is and how it's used. Again, so you don't feel like, oh, if I put this into Teams, it's locked there. If I put it into SharePoint, oh my goodness, now I'm locked to that too. It really isn't. Really, there's a lot more data portability than you would think, but where this helps is to have that IT team understand a much broader view to start working together. And where I think this is also very different from a CEO or CIO perspective is, if you have today an IT team that is, here's my people that do messaging, here's my people that do desktops, here's my people that handle identity, here's the people that do applications, and they're separate silos. It makes sense back then because their capabilities were pretty much by themselves, and then the teams were somewhat loosely connected, and so they didn't really they kind of interacted with one another. The problem now is the once you get deployed into Microsoft 365 and you have all these great platform services you can use inside of Azure, if you keep those teams siloed, they will continue to build siloed services that are there, and it's very frustrating. Instead, you really need to start to mesh them through, so you can actually have different people start to work, kind of across the platform, but they need to have that awareness of all those other people and what they need to go do. So again, there were also no silos because they had to have the deep skills for that thing, and trying to have that level of depthness across these different teams work together just creates more chaos. That's not the case anymore. These teams really should be bound together, and you probably found in those different silos that there were people in the identity team that did storage, people were in the line of business applications did storage, people in the messaging service, they did storage too. And even though some of them work together, they were very siloed, because they're like, well, my storage is different from what your storage. Now you're not really talking about that anymore. Now you're talking about, well, hey, how are we providing these services to the business or to our customers? And that might transcend the identity services, the line of business applications that impact how we do our security services. So the challenge or the view that I normally have with a lot of customers is you really need to start pulling them all together and reorganize what that team looks like to better map to the services you're getting in Microsoft 365 that have been fantastically done by Microsoft to actually make them work together. This was like the biggest challenge back in the day, even in Microsoft. Like, man, you'd have to install this, configure this. Is like these people don't even work with one another. Where now in the Microsoft 365 cloud space, they definitely work with one another. They feel like they're connected in these services, and they really do work together. So now it means I have to not only think about how I restructure my team, but also getting the right certifications, getting the right uh, uh, learning path for them that maps to what we want to do as a business. So it's not an easy thing. These are the areas that we have a program called Agile Advisor, where we're going to be working with our customers to actually say, here's some skilled mappings between this type of traditional role to this new kind of cloud role, and here's why we think that they map to one another, and what that path of change is. Not just here's the certification to take, obviously there'll be one part of it, but here's areas that we would recommend in their change of focus that will make an impact for them. So those are the things that we're doing now. So, again, I would just say for those that are kind of an executive role or director role that has this team of IT people, to really start thinking them more of generalists, thinking about those people need to have a better tie-in and understanding of the business. And I know there's times like, well, they do think about the business. Like, they normally think about providing those services to the business versus what does the business need beyond just that, and then working as a team to put together a roadmap. Because if not, I've seen a lot of teams, a lot of companies struggle to make they pay for the licenses, they're deployed in there, and they're kind of holding the their transformation back because they really haven't put these teams together and make them move quickly. Instead, there's arguments of who owns what. So that's kind of what I wanted to bring up in terms of kind of upskilling a little bit. I think it's more of thinking about your organization, where it needs to go, and then I think that'll help set the path of where to go in the future.
I think it might be fun in the future to come back and revisit this
Mhm.
with one of those upskilling plans, maybe made a little bit more generic, but some of the stuff we've done inside the company. Um,
Yeah, I'll say for us, there's very, very few people out there today that map exactly to the type of work and the path that we have, both culturally, how we have all of our teams aligned. So we actually go out and look for people who have a craving for new knowledge, like the fast pace that we go on, and we look for those that have good transferable skills from where they are today and the level they want to come at. So I would say, for example, if you've done a bunch of Windows Server deployments, that but who hasn't, right? But have you really kind of nerded out and understand what it means to do these type of deployments? What is, you get somebody who's maybe a little bit more senior and they understand, Active Directory, but do you only know Active Directory uses in computers? Yeah, well, you're not just a senior level here. Like, you got to know. Do you know the configuration containers in Active Directory, where the schema, what the FSMO roles are, why they're important, or differences between the old school PDC BDCs versus the new world of multi-masters. If you have that level of depthness and understanding how does DNS work and all these areas, then that's the right level of entry point to then say, you can, that would be your level of curiosity, and your level of various depthness in places would be a good starting point here, because now we're just going to build on that like crazy, and you're just going to learn this new world of Azure Active Directory and Exchange Online, APIs and PowerShell and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and talking about that breadth versus depth, interestingly enough, and for those of you watching, I have a 9-year-old son, and yesterday, Conrad, Spencer was worried that he wasn't smart enough. Now, he's sharp as a tack, but he was worried that he was a jack of all trades and a master of none, because one of his best friends is just a pure math genius.
Mm-hmm.
And so I presented him with, I actually went and looked up, we had talked about T-shaped employees, where there are people who are generally broad, but do have a specific expertise in something. And I found a good article, and I think it was in Forbes, and they had a different model on this of I, T, and X shaped employees. So your I employees are those siloed experts you were talking about. Your T employees are your generalists that do have a specialization. And then you have the X employees who kind of span the entire organization and look at that big picture. And it talked about how each of these roles are very important within a company. Um, and I think that's changing. That's different from when I started my career, where everything was very specialized. You're going to do this, you're going to be good at this. Um, and as things continue to change faster and faster, you really do have to become more, at least a T, if not an X, in order to keep up. Because, I think about direct mail marketers. I mean, coming from a marketing standpoint, well, nobody sends postcards anymore. That's such a small niche. And if you just stayed in that one silo, your career's pretty dried up by now, or you own a direct mail company. And this is especially true in IT, where, I mean, I just dug out a 20-year-old IDE drive, and I was thinking about, God, I used to build computers. That's not a career option anymore.
Yeah, well, I mean, there's still going to be people that build a lot of servers and deployment. They just work at places like Microsoft and AWS, right?
Right.
You're still going to have all those big box, but then that just even there it just becomes a smaller population that has to have it. And I know there's fear, like, well, wait a minute, I've moved to the cloud, or things are really moving that fast, but everything in the industries are moving that fast. No matter what industry you're in, healthcare, government, finance, all of those businesses are moving quickly. So to say, well, I'll stay on prem, that'll slow things down. Like, what do you do in your business? The reason things are changing is because the market is changing, or the demand or
Yeah.
the need, and your ability to expand or contract because there's a pandemic or something else going on, that you need that level of flexibility. So, I think really the view here is you might have some great technical staff, and they're great people, and they know your business, and where do I take them next? And it's an interesting problem. But yeah, we can come back and take a look at it and provide a little bit more examples of some of those direct mappings.
Yeah. And then when I get this up on YouTube, I'll go ahead and I'll post a link. We did that tech talk with Rich Carlson from Microsoft. It was his last tech talk with us, where he talked about all of the different resources he used to become an Azure expert. Because there are so many learning opportunities out there that the horizon is truly endless. It's as big as the cloud, man. All right. Well, I'm not seeing any questions up in the questions panel. If you are watching online, feel free, though, to ask questions down in the questions section below. Give us a like and follow. And if you'd like to join us live and be able to ask us questions directly, you can go ahead and do that at agilit.co/CWC for Coffee with Conrad. And we will see you all on Thursday. Thank you very much, Conrad.
Absolutely. Thanks, everybody.